Hi, so here we are with a collection of young and not so young people, and we're going to be reflecting on this amazing conference that was held a couple of weeks ago in Meanjin in Brisbane called Oceania Foresight Symposium or Conference, something like that. And we had the good fortune of some lovely people sponsoring students to come to the conference. The sponsorship came from three from ANU through Thomas Biederman, Dr. Thomas Biederman, and three from an anonymous guy who's an Australian expat, my spies tell me, living in Switzerland, who is paying it forward. And so we had 7 people, and 6 of them were able to show up today to tell us a little bit about their experience. And if we're recording my screen going, oops, that way, we've dragged Adam Sharp in. Okay, so Adam Sharp is a wonderful addition to the Australian flora and fauna. He's come from Thailand, from England, brought his family here, and Adam has been working with young people and youth futures for at least a decade or more now, and the last 4 years, he tells us, was spent with UNICEF working across the globe with 193 countries and whatever else. So Adam is here to sort of stir the pot a little bit, probably ask a couple of good questions along the way. But, really we want to hear from JD and Jai and Kat and Tyson and Kale and Lily, okay? So, because we would like you to share what you saw, what you got, thoughts, confusions, feelings, anything really that arose. You all happy with that, you guys?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So, and I also invite you to unmute. That's way you can join us like Kale just did, just spontaneously. If someone says something that, okay, fantastic, yes, or whatever, that way we have an easier flow. It's not so we're not doing that kind of formal talking head type stuff. So what I'd like to do, I think, is we're going to, Tyson, can we start with you? And I'm just going to work around my screen and say, give us a couple of takeaways first, please. And what brought you there is another good thing to touch on.
So I was offered the opportunity to attend, and I thought it would be a good experience to see some new perspectives, see what people had to say, and make some new connections and whatnot. And I didn't really know what to expect coming in. It was my second conference, but it was very different from the first conference I attended, which was basically sit in rooms and listen to people talk. This was far more engaging and a lot of workshops. Everyone was a little bit more friendly too. Lots of people just willing to have a chat with you, which was really nice. But I think walking away from the first day, my big reflection was how my mind works and how I think. And some of the workshops I partook in and some of the talks I found a little bit abstract and struggled to grasp their full concepts and whatnot, which isn't a criticism of the topics or myself, just more of how I think, coming from Western institutions and whatnot. And given that my work is with Indigenous communities, the importance of being able to appreciate other ways of thinking, knowing and doing, and trying to have some cognitive reflexivity and being able to adapt to those things and try and think on those lines as well.
That's interesting because the conference theme was wayfinding, right? and we had Auntie Leanne open the conference with sort of an acknowledgement of country, but also sharing of Indigenous ideas. So so the wayfinding is partly what you're describing. How would you express wayfinding to someone, Tyson, now that you sat through the 2 days and experienced the 2 days?
I wouldn't be able. I don't think I could describe wayfinding because I still did find that very abstract to me. I write things down and I know where I want to go. I have a straight line, a trajectory versus intuition, feelings, and it was just a bit different to how I think. That makes sense.
That's lovely because intuition and feelings is a lot of what wayfinding is about. So we might explore that theme because, as I always tell people, I don't prepare. I am very much a spontaneous wayfinder. So let's jump to Kat and see whether Kat can add some of her own reflections and maybe touch on this question of wayfinding.
Um, yeah, look, I think that in my like general reflection, um, about the symposium, I think obviously I was at last year's symposium as well. And I think this one had a lot more of a broad spectrum between, and not one group or person was sort of exactly what each of these categories are, but look, between more spiritual people, academic people, and then corporate people. But I think there was this really common theme of, the world that we live in has quite rigid structures, but, we wanted to find how we could have agency in those structures and what ways can we challenge those structures to find agency. And I think that was sort of the message that everyone was sort of putting forward with all of the workshops, just in different ways or different approaches, which I think is really cool. Um, I think like for me, wayfinding is, like there's navigation, so you sort of know where you're going. Whereas wayfinding is sort of you figuring it out as you go. And I think, yeah, like if I have, sorry, I do have my notes about wayfinding. Like I was trying to think off the top of my head though. Like I think someone was talking about, I don't remember who it was, but they were talking about the six different components about wayfinding. So like intuition,
Yep.
knowing as you go, cross-referencing.
Michael McCollum, right?
I believe so.
Michael.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Um, yeah, improvisation, networking, narrating. Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting. Like you can't really predict the direction that you're going in. You just sort of have to map it as you go. But that's sort of what wayfinding meant to me from what I understood at the symposium.
Yeah. Thank you, Kat. And from your own practice, having worked for now, it's almost, 9 months, you and Jai and Kale have been working on this project. I can't remember the name of the project, so can you remind me of that? And then can you tell us a little bit about maybe how it might have somehow integrated, perhaps, or not?
Yeah, for sure. So our project is called New Tomorrow's Tomorrow, and it's sort of designed so that young people can engage with learning different futures practices with a real focus on how we can explore like futures and creativity together, or using futures methodologies to create something. And I found my big takeaway, and sort of with Jai and I in particular, having just finished our teaching degrees, is sort of the way that the different techniques and the different ideas that were explored in workshops, so that we could take that away and impart that on our own students and participants. So I was always sort of looking for, how were people delivering their workshops and what kind of activities were they doing? And so one of the big takeaways for me was actually the Museum of Futures workshop. I just really loved how that connected with everyone, and everyone was really keen to get involved. And I think that's sort of what Jai and I are trying to achieve in our workshops is how can we find different ways for people to, engage with futures ideas, but express it in a way that isn't necessarily having someone stand in front of a board and point at, different things
I do
on a
want to
PowerPoint.
say that activity really did jump out. Like one of the workshop like classes that we've done. Like I can sit and listen to people talk, and it is very interesting and write and take notes and stuff. But as soon as they were like, "All right, we're gonna do 20 minutes of making an art thing," I was like, "Yes!" And then like just locked in on making my little making the little matchbox. Everyone having like the limits as well. That's part of creativity, is being limited, and then that's where you become most creative. Like everyone having just a little matchbox and then go crazy was very, very fun. So
Definitely.
yeah.
And I think what I really appreciated about that workshop in particular was that obviously it gave everyone a platform to engage with the sort of the specific futures ideas that were discussed in that workshop. But I found that, especially at my table, like people were thinking about other ideas that they'd picked up in other workshops, and were sort of used, like, how can they translate those ideas into these like really specific parameters, which I thought was really special, and that was a big takeaway for me, or something special that I took away, and I hope to sort of apply in my own workshops.
Beautiful. Well, I'll do an advert for Museum of the Futures. It's Claire Marshall's sort of brainchild, and she was working with Amanda Reeves, who she started collaborating with, and both of them are very strongly experiential, and the Museum of the Futures is where artifacts from the future are shared with people today type thing. So of course there's a lot of imagination and creativity involved, and it's also about what Tyson was talking about, that intuitive feeling response to an artifact or to an experience, an embodied experience. You've got something in front of you, for instance, and we were asked, and I had a lot of fun too, by the way, we were asked to create little things that just fitted into a matchbox, okay, and that we were given different clays, different colouring things, scissors and paper to cut things out and create things, and we were given a little matchbox. Oh,
This one there.
well done. If you've got your Museum of the Future artifact lying around, please find it. Mine got, I did a swapsy with Dr. Caitlin Noakes, but she gave me her one, so I'll do it like that. So yeah. And as you can see, it's in a matchbox. It was a wonderful experience. Adam, did you have one, or I thought you sort of may have lurched through it. I'm not sure.
I did. I can't place it. But it was basically like a ship in a sea with eyes on the inside of each side of the matchbox. So north, south, east, and west was sort of the eyes of past, present, and future generations.
Yes. Yeah.
It was an extraordinary process of participatory futures, and I do wonder how it would have gone had it been on day one versus day two.
That's a very good. So wayfinding is also about timing. So if you do something too soon and people are not quite ready for it, so that's a very good point, Adam. Thank you. Yeah. Let's jump to Jai then, because we'll do back on back. So tomorrow's tomorrow. Well, what was it called again?
Tomorrow.
Okay, I really like that. So Jai, you can sort of riff off what Kat has just said, and of course bring in your own experiences as well, please.
Yeah, sure. So I think Kat really succinctly summed up the project. For me, myself, it's something, and Kat said this as well, that we want to do like again and again with new cohorts each time. And of course, I'm graduated now. I'm about to become a teacher for secondary students. And that sort of ties into what I felt was the strongest moment in the symposium, was just listening to Adam Sharp deliver, his powerful discussion on how we can engage youth with futures processes in a meaningful and agentic way. And it's a shame I didn't catch him after. I really had to bounce, but I just wish I could have talked to him more about, what processes do we really find to be successful in engaging students with the future. Because I know for a lot of young people, and for our participants as well, they've exclaimed this, sometimes they can feel very unagentic and pessimistic, which is just an awful combo. And it might be why, as Adam Sharp was saying, why we see so many young people discuss, retaining political violence. They resort to political violence because perhaps they feel, again, like they don't have a lot of agency in their current field of agency, so they need to expand it through violence, and they feel pessimistic about the future. So yeah, that's our project's trying to help younger people feel better about the future, feel like they can make a change, and that's why I just resonated so strongly with Adam Sharp's words.
Let's have another call.
Yeah, I'd love to. I would love to.
We're still connected, mate.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I want to advertise now. April the 8th, Jai and Kat are graduating, walking down the aisle with their funny hat on, receiving their bachelor degrees and so on. I think that's fantastic. So yeah, we'll be barracking for you on that day. So it's wonderful. Let's jump to Lily. Lily, What was the experience of Oceania like for you?
Yeah, sort of to immediately follow off Jai with this pessimism we're sort of seeing with the younger generation. I think it kind of, we almost can't afford to not be hopeful. I think that that's like a really important aspect of futures. I think we owe it to everyone who comes after us, everyone who exists now, to be hopeful. And I think specifically two things really, really stood out for me. And one of them was actually something you said, Marcus, which was to do with wayfinding, I think, and encounter and being present with encounter. And I think that that is really important in our day-to-day life with anything. And that ties specifically for me with this idea of that we don't own the land, or we don't, we belong to it. And I think that that's really important with encounter, with the people we encounter, when we're thinking about what food we're eating, when we think about what clothes we're wearing, when we think about everything. And I think that I've had this idea sort of circulating around in my head for a while, but I couldn't put it into those sort of words. And I think for me, yeah, acknowledging encounter and then being present with an encounter was really something that was important for me.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Well, let's just keep moving because we'll come back to everybody anyway. Kale, what about you?
Yeah, I think that I came into the symposium because I'm a part of Kat and Jai's workshop. I came into the symposium a lot, very new to futures thinking in general. And as a creative, our workshops, we approach it with research but creating art, like visual arts or writing, which is I enjoy a lot. I think I definitely was a big thing that stood out to me, definitely not in a negative way, but was this kind of broad spectrum of like the range of futures, because I'm still so new to it. And in the workshop was we approached different ways to look at the future, like futures methodologies and all that. The workshop really opened my eyes up just to the broad range of people who engage in futures work for different reasons. Like Kat said, there's very spiritualism, and then people like corporate, like more corporate minded. I did, and I also agree with what Tyson said. I mean, I hadn't been to last symposium, but everyone was so kind. It was very welcoming. Like being being new to things and not really knowing where my place was, but everyone's very welcoming and open to talking about their experiences and their research and stuff like that. And I and being able to be part of the symposium talking about themed around wayfaring as well, which is something I I care, I guess not able to put into words, but now I can put into words that adaptability, the skill of adaptability, both in maybe personal life or being a part of community or work or etc. It's definitely something that I personally care for a lot, with a bit of neurodivergence myself. Adaptability is not one of my greatest skills. Definitely being able to put a word to it and be like, all right, I know it's an ability I can hone, kind of thing. And then hearing from leaders in that field, I enjoyed it a lot. I had a very good time, and I feel like my mind is definitely more, if not full of information, is more open to be full of information.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad for.
Did you go? You went to a particular session, didn't you? That really impacted you.
Oh yes,
Can you tell us about that?
the strengths one.
Yeah.
The one with Hayden
Hayden.
Thomas. Yeah, the superpower economy, what your strengths will be worth in 2035. Like I said before, because I practice, I work in animation and film, and especially animation as an industry
Mm-hmm.
where a big shock of AI. You know, people talk about how AI will jump out at you and they'll take your job and everything like that. And I went into that. Into that workshop thinking, you know, what will my strengths be in 2035? You know, I guess I was going more with the idea of like, well, what should I retain? What will the future look like? What should I work towards? And yeah, Hayden did we had a fun task of like, we had a sheet of all our strengths and we picked out our top strengths, and then they were broken down into categories of like performance or strength of interacting with people or processes. And a lot of mine, because I have really found my place where I was unsure before, but through my uni career, really found my place as production manager, so supporting my fellow creatives. I'll just by happenstance, a lot of my strengths were people based and, you know, being dedicated and caring. So yeah, I think instead of going into that talk finding out like, you know, being told, yeah, these are the strengths that you should be gearing towards, it was more looking at our present, being like, what are your strengths now, so that you can really hone them, or even feel pride in them alone in your strengths more than hone them. Like and any strengths that you feel that aren't your greatest aren't your weaknesses. They're kind of just your not strengths, your lowest strengths. So for example, I'm not a very ambitious person, and the term for ambition that got used was kind of a sense of winning or like being above others.
Yeah.
And that's definitely not who I am. I don't ever want to put someone down. Of course, I want to succeed, but to win, I feel, has a certain connotation.
Yeah.
But you know, it definitely has a place in everyone's life, and I think being mindful of it is more important than trying to hone that one. But yeah, that one really spoke to me the most, especially with my realm of study. Yeah.
Thank you. That's a really nice way of giving people a taste of something that's quite concrete, because we grow through our encounters. Thanks, Lily. So, you know, we grow, and we need to meet people, and people who can not just challenge us, but to actually support us in growing and stretching and so on. So yeah, let's jump to you, JD. So yeah, what stood out for you, and if you can throw some further light on wayfinding, feel free to do so, please. You don't have to. I'm just putting it out there.
Yeah, so I feel like I entered the conference feeling maybe a bit lost and just not sure where I was going to go or what it was going to do for me. And as Adam said, I wrote it down, an endemic dread and despair, just verbalized it perfectly. So the biggest thing I got was just a very refreshed sense of optimism and reassurance that my research and what I want to do actually matters, and that this is the community of people that I was looking for and who I need to lean into. Yeah, a lot of the time I find sometimes I'm reflecting on like my big ideas and things, and I'm wondering if they're just nonsense. And there was a couple of times with a couple of speakers that I realized they think the exact way I do, and we have the same insights, and they're doing meaningful things with their work. And so on wayfinding, I think that was a great way to it brought me back to the path that I wanted to be on. And yeah, just knowing as you go. So knowing that I didn't have to go in with a plan. I don't have to still have a plan. I can know as I go, type of thing. Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah. So, I mean, what would be really great to hear, and Kale, you already helped me with that in seeing this as a thing, is to ask each of you, well, what was one of the sessions that you attended, Tyson? So you went to a bunch of sessions. We had it was so many to choose from, right? You know, and then the choices were impossible. I wanted to be in 3 sessions at once. You know, you had to buy the bullet, right? So it might be really good to have a quick snapshot from each of you. And Carol, if you can think of another one, you're welcome to. Otherwise, you can just say pass, because you already just walked us through the Hayden session. But either way, it'll be great. So Tyson, was there a session for you that kind of did something? I'm not sure what. Maybe you were what was that term you used, JD? Endemic
dread and despair.
So maybe you had some of that. Sounds terrible. And you were, somebody put a Band-Aid on it for you. I don't know. Can you tell us a little bit, Tyson, please?
Well, firstly, I absolutely loved Adam's talk, and I was a little bit disappointed that it was at the end of the second day. I was like, I wish I'd had more energy to be able to really listen to this. Like, I wish I had been on first day. And I just remember growing up and going to school at the height of global warming talk, and that politician from America, Al Gore, was all the rage, and trying to discuss things with my teachers and family and be like, children shouldn't worry about that. Children should be seen and not heard. And then years later, Scott Morrison, the PM at the time, saying these kids who are protesting should be in school, and how angry I was at that. And hearing Adam talk about all the work that he's been doing, it was very refreshing and inspiring. And so that was awesome. Thank you for that, Adam. But on a real, something I really reflected on that hit me kind of hard, how I work and how I think, was on day one with Dr. Cheryl Doig and Amy Knudsen. So Futuring Together, Embedding Indigenous Ways of Knowing.
Yeah.
And it was it felt like kind of like a guided meditation through different stages and phases. And so it was walking through our thinking through the past, present, where we want to be and how we're going to get there. And thinking about when I was at different stages, thinking about the present, that just gave me anxiety. Like, I'm doing a PhD, it's like I've got all this work to do. Here I am, I should be doing this, and this. Thinking about the past gave me nothing but dread, and brought up all the mistakes and whatnot. And then going to the future, I couldn't really get a hell of a lot out of it. But going to what I wanted and what my goals were, remind me how goal driven I am. So when I have a goal and a target in front of me, I am driven to achieve that goal and kind of relentless in that pursuit. But it just reminded me of how I think through, not very positive. And then also there was also another stage of trying to connect with your ancestors. And given that I am a white Australian male, I don't know if anybody else has more connection with their ancestry and whatnot, but it wasn't a part of my family growing up, this connection with ancestors. So I felt quite lost there, and in that component of it. And I do remember another person expressing having a similar feeling in that part too, which was nice to hear. But it hit me a little bit hard, but in a good way, something to reflect on and try and think positively.
That's so interesting, because ancestors are what, in a sense, we are here because we have ancestors. You go back 10 generations and there is 1,000 odd people who had to meet one another for me or you to be here. So I think when and they were talking from a New Zealand perspective too, a Maori perspective, Cheryl Doig and Amy. Was it Amy? I think it was Amy. Yeah, they were giving a perspective where the Maori say walking backwards into the future, right? Which I think is an absolutely stunning statement. But I think it's really an invitation for us to maybe engage with ancestors, not who was your great-great-grandmother and what was she doing, but more generally that we are here because of past generations. I think that's a beautiful idea, even though it is obviously discombobulating. You go, what? Mate,
I would have loved to have done it outside. And with my bare feet on the grass, or in a forest, or by the beach or something. I mean, I think I would be very open to trialing that experience again with a fresh lens.
Nice. Yeah, and that we chose that venue because it was closer to the grass, at least. But when the organisers, I was sort of in the back seat, but when Alyssa and Melissa and Helen and it was Catherine, when they were doing it, they realised 80 people, you just can't get them outside. So we were sort of somewhere in between. But yeah, I think you're right, because to get outside on the grass is a really great opportunity. Catherine, actually, Mags, does a lot of work in that space, walking people along rivers and getting people just to present and notice. and she was the fourth organizer. Yeah, so wonderful. Thank you, Tyson. Kat, what about you?
So I really like it's hard to pick one to be honest, and I think that most of the people here will say that as well.
Mm.
I feel like they all sort of had their own valuable insights. Like for me, I really like all of them, but there was just like bits that I really picked from each one. But if I had to pick one that probably interests me the most, it would be the panel that answered the question in an algorithmic age, what can we not afford to sacrifice?
Yes.
And I think that was a really interesting discussion for a lot of different reasons. And there was a lot that wasn't discussed, which Jai, Kale, and I talked about, but I won't talk about that right now. But I think that like I work in the like finance industry, and so I'm really interested in how like how people affected, like consumers affected by the use of AI, and that was touched on a little bit in this workshop.
Yep.
Because I feel like it's not something, it's something that's really, it's only really considered, from a very, very corporatized perspective and from a money-making perspective. And I think the broader implications of that like aren't considered very much, if not at all, and are not being like, there needs to be regulations in place for that, and I feel like what is currently being proposed isn't good enough. But this panel delved into that a little bit, which I really appreciated. And I think that like it was interesting to see, each panelist had a different perspective on AI, and they all sort of took a different stance. Amy Ross Taylor, who she worked for Suncorp Bank, and she talked about it from like an internal perspective.
Yep.
Jess, I don't remember her last name, was she talked about it from like a youth perspective, which was very interesting, and
Yep.
what the role of AI and social media has, what is the effect on young people or people that can't necessarily consent on the use of their data and their information. And I think like and Ruth as well, who works like she works in the regulatory
Governance.
space.
She's in the
Yeah.
governance space. Yep.
And that was really interesting as well, sort of like what is being considered in that space, and what are the ways that the use of AI is being considered. But I just appreciated that conversation and sort of, what that brought to light. And I think that the conversation as a whole, in terms of actually answering the question of what can we, afford to sacrifice, I don't think that, yes, Jess Price, thank you, Adam, is the name of that lady. But I don't think that question was necessarily answered in that panel, but it sort of opened up an opportunity, and I hunted down a couple of the people after the panel to sort of get a more concrete answer. And it was just really interesting how their different perspectives, sort of like what I was saying earlier, like they were all different based on their perspectives and their stance on the industry and on the way AI is used, but they were all still very concerned with the use of consent and the use of agency, and that being like, we cannot afford to sacrifice consent. And that sort of speaks back to, the broader idea that everyone was talking about, where everyone should have agency. No one should feel complicit in whatever structures are sort of being imposed. And in this world where AI is sort of becoming, it's sort of being like shoved down our throats as like be all end all. But yeah, really, like you should have agency, and you should be able to sort of decide whether that's for you or And I thought that was very interesting that everyone sort of came back to that sort of statement in their own special way.
Thank you.
But,
Thank you. Yeah. No, and it's such an important thing. And of course, the question is more important than any possible answer anyway, because it's, for me, that's what the diversity of that panel was one of the great things about that panel. When they thought it up and came up with that that collection of identities, so many different people. So it was very good in that way. Kale, what about you? What was a session that stood out for you other than the Hayden one, which you spoke to? Was there one?
Yeah, there was another one. I did really enjoy the Theseus ship one that we did with Steph and Thomas, but I feel that maybe I'm not sure if maybe Jai might speak to that one, or you might, Marcus. But I think that stood out to me, of course, but I think another one that stood out to me was the one on the first day. That was just because I unfortunately could not get there at the very start of the day, so I showed up just in time for our second round of breakouts, which was the magic of serendipity, the wayfinding through unexpected wisdom, which was with Dr. Sinclair and Professor Harlow. So we, kind of discussed these terms of agents, or like defining kind of agency, and then took just a 20-minute walk around the venue outside, just kind of wherever we felt we were drawn to, in pairs, and just walk and observe things, observe how you feel, observe the things around you, but don't talk with your partner. Uh, Although some people did break that rule, but that's all right. And the point was that we would come back and discuss as a group. We talk about where we went, and then with our partner, and then you will see what our different perspectives were. Like, a lot of people had very different experiences doing the exact same walk with their partner than their partner. And that was really, like, really, really interesting. The term of serendipity about finding knowledge in unexpected places. I like, for example, I can read just a couple of my notes. Like, I was as soon as I'd left at the front doors, we'd gone from like the air conditioned building out into this kind of like slightly warmer, more humid air is what initially I felt. I'm very like skin sensitive, I guess. So I felt, and like as I was breathing in deeply, like the venue was beautiful. As you mentioned before, it's a very natural area. So as soon as you leave, you're right underneath these beautiful trees. But then as you walk down to the waterfront, the air becomes a lot more clear and crisp and cool. So more fresh, I suppose. And, I was really, really thinking about my kind of, at first starting very like internal, thinking about like kind of my place, and as I breathe in the air, how it feels within my body and outside of it, like my place within nature, and kind of the effects, and from there kind of worked my way outwards. So the impacts of humans on nature in general, and then feeling how I felt about nature, how the impact of nature on us as humans, how we shape it, but it also, we still have it in our spaces, our cities, or even the lack of it in our cities, what impact that has on us. And then from there, I just kind of was thinking about my just these different like impacts of how humans on humans. I didn't really have a say in how that area was planned, but I thought it was very beautiful. And then how I'd have to ride my motorbike back through the city, which it has a lot less natural spaces, and then just kind of that reflection. Yeah, when we all returned, lots of people had different experiences where they were looking at very small, like my perspective may have been much bigger, thinking about the city and the area and like nature itself, but a lot of people are just looking at like small spiders, and how if they had walked through the web on accident, if they weren't looking, they would have ruined it. They would ruined its day's worth of work, and it would have to find a new place to make a home and that kind of stuff. So the scale of serendipity is very, it changes person to person, and it's about perspective. But it's that wayfaring. We didn't have a goal, we didn't have a destination. It was walk around for 20 minutes, see what you see, think what you think, and then we'll come back all together afterwards and think together, I guess. Which then leading into the second day and talking about wayfaring more was really, really insightful. I think it was a good active activity to show wayfaring in a short amount of time. Yeah.
Marcus, can I build on Kel? Kel, I'm really hearing you, and I felt that connection to nature was a really integral part of this conference and this experience, especially on day one. And I felt this with the session facilitated by Willow Pryor, who took us through her wild framework, wild being acronym, which I can't remember how it breaks down right now. But I said to myself, you know, there was another breakout session that I could have gone to that was much more academic and, you know, seemed a lot more like my comfort zone. I said, I'm going to break out of my comfort zone this time. I'm going to go to wild outside with Willow. Okay, let's do this. And she had us shoes and socks off, sitting on the floor. And soon, like within a few minutes, we were dancing with our eyes closed with like a yellow like a yellow blindfold, um, and we were sort of dancing and pretending to be animals and sort of connecting to our wild twin. Now you know that you know that feeling when you've been dancing for a little while longer than you thought you'd have to. Like it got to like 10 minutes in, and I'm thinking to myself, and my other selves are starting to come in like, oh, you're starting to look ridiculous, aren't you? Like, is she really going to make us dance for longer than 15 minutes? Like, and suddenly she's shaking a rattle. You know, she's walking past me, shaking a rattle and like crumbling leaves. And all of my selves are in conflict right now. I'm like, this is not for you. You look like an idiot. And then as it went on and on and on, eventually I just completely let go. I was like, you know what?
Surrender.
I have to surrender to nature in this moment. Like, and I have to, and it was a real, and I would liken it to the experience of the whole first day, which is almost like disentanglement of all of your self-protection, all of the armor that you build up, especially when you're in a conference and you're meeting all these people for the first time. Some very intelligent people who could quite easily give you a feeling of intimidation. I'm gonna be really vulnerable. I'm gonna embrace this, and I'm gonna just read this little poem that she asked us to write to our wild twin. This is not. I grew up in London. Okay, like we don't do stuff like this. All right. It was a letter to my wild twin. You've disowned me for your whole life. By disowning me, you disowned nature, of which you are a part. You are a part of nature, and nature is a part of you. Part of your ancestry, your heritage, your extraordinary, deep, long history. Reclaiming me is as natural as breathing, as rolling in the sand and swimming in the deep. So let's go together, back to your past, back to a future no longer estranged. That is, thank you. No. I say it not to show off, but to just embrace that feeling of feeling very insecure, but by the end of day one, feeling very secure and comfortable and in community with one another. And in a way, what processes like that do, and days like that do, is they, you know, these selves that we have that are in conflict, those conflicts really calmed, and we connected to some sort of higher self, which was connected to people, community, and nature. And it meant that day two was truly, truly profound. So I really resonated with you there, Kale. And I don't think there are many conferences that help you strip away all of that armor to really expose you to new ideas, like wayfinding, where one must do just that. And I think so much futures practice, so many of our methods and tools are giving us an illusion of control, which we don't have. And that is the same for the everyday person as it is for the very experienced practitioner of many, many decades.
Yeah, fantastic. And what I'm hearing in both Kale and your Adam, your reflection is the relationality of wayfinding. Serendipity, it means the encounter with what? Anything. There's and then how does meaning arise out of that encounter? In what ways are we renewed or perhaps even reinvented through encounters? Wow, that's just fabulous. Thank you. Let's jump to Jai. I'm going to jump to Jai. You look like you're raring to go, Jai.
Hi.
Very thoughtful. You look very thoughtful there.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad I give off that air. So I guess the one that really stood out for me is on day one, I went to Dr. Caitlin Noakes and her Ouija futures, which was just phenomenal. Now, for me, I think it resonated really strongly with also Margaret Westcott's sort of look at how we can use art and this idea of the pre-conscious to allow these like eruptive ideas of what the future can be, what we think about the future, what we can create with the future. Because we're using, like a little Ouija board that we all put a finger on, and well, we didn't really know what to do with it. We just let that pointer slide around. And in the end, we got a bunch of letters, which could hardly be a word. But still, working with each other, again, Marcus, the idea of serendipity, of contamination and encounter, working with each other, with the room, with, if you're spiritual, the ghosts of the Ouija board, we still were able to, create our interpretations of what we want the future to be. And everyone created their own interesting interpretation. Like, I need to take more time for myself. I need to be kinder to myself. I want to connect more with nature and with each other. It was even interesting seeing what spirits people conjured. Everyone had a unique one. But that really stood out to me because I think it's such a fantastic way of, every day sort of scales build up in our mind. It just happens, we have work to attend to, we have schedules to attend to, and they push very normative visions in our head of what the future is, right? And I think games like that, especially games like that are so fantastic for allowing eruption, allowing something new and fun and, beautiful to emerge through contamination. So I thought that was amazing. And I think Dr. Caitlin is amazing for hosting it.
Yeah, she'll be thrilled to hear that. No, it was really good. Because actually, JD and Lily, at least we were there as well. But let's jump to you, JD. You don't have to talk about Caitlin's one, or you can. What was something that workshop that stood out for you?
I was going to talk about Caitlin's
Yeah,
one.
we'll talk
actually.
about it, please.
Sorry.
Well,
No,
we'll hear.
that's okay.
No, we can
No,
hear.
I got the same thing that Jai got out of it. I think maybe just a little bit different in that it was really nice that and whether she meant to or not, I don't know if it was intentional, but it was stepping outside of the normative ways of knowing and learning that we're confined to. 'Cause I'm a very spiritual person. It was very normal and familiar for me, but it might not have been for others. But embodied knowing, using the body as a tool for knowing and wayfinding, which is fascinating to me because it's a very anti-Western institutional knowledge tool. So yeah, that was, I don't know if that was her intention or not, but it just went hand in hand with the theme of the conference, which was Indigenous knowing, wayfinding, just stepping outside the things that we're normally confined to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a great add-on to what Jai said, and it's Caitlin was experimenting and playing, and I think she was intentionally doing those disruptive things, and it all came out of her reading Derrida, right? I mean, go figure. But Derrida wrote that book on the spectre of Marx. And where does Marxism go following the collapse of the Soviet Union and so on? Was it? So that was a very interesting take, and I think it was a lot of fun. Lily, were you going to talk about that or something else? What was a workshop that stood out for you?
I'm going to go back to serendipity, I think, but particularly I think in decision making, I think that is what I took away mostly from that workshop is, for example, if I'm doing like a uni assignment or, on a very minor scale and, you get stuck into it and you're like, oh my God, you get overwhelmed by all the information, and taking a step outside and being with nature and having a second to breathe and then coming back in. And sometimes something will just come to me and it'll be way more clear than what it was before. But on a large scale, when it comes to futures and especially people in power in decision making and with social media and technology and screens and all these things, I think we've taken a huge step away from serendipity, especially in obviously nature. And doing that walk outside, I was like, wow, this should be like compulsory for especially corporations. I think it should be so compulsory to be out in nature, because our decision making, it's more clearer, it's less anxiety driven, it's less like boom 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 boom. You know, I'm not
less profit driven.
Yeah, I'm not articulating this in a very well academic sense, but you know, I think that I've been really making a mindful effort to practice that since I've left the conference. Like with everything, everything I'm doing, I'm sitting there, I'm sitting with a feeling, or sitting with an intuition, or sitting with an encounter, but especially making an effort to sit in nature. If I'm wanting to scroll, particularly, instead of scrolling, I'm going to go outside. And even if I'm not, go for a walk, or even just sitting outside, getting a certain amount of sun, you know, doing these sort of things. And I think that that's what something that's really become far removed in our present time, and we could really benefit from adding back in, you know. And one more final point actually on that, with Indigenous ways of knowing, we can look at that and we can see that being one with the environment around us, you know, in creating decisions, is something that is not a new idea. It's something that that many people from many different cultures have been doing for a long time, that we should be taking note of.
Fantastic. Practice. Making this stuff a practice, I think, is really important, because we are conditioned. I mean, that's the whole point of being in any culture or society, that we're conditioned. So the normativity that you spoke to, JD, and so on, is there. So the fact that you've actually changed or instigated or instituted, that's the word, instituted a practice, is really important, really. I think that's fantastic. And obviously it means that the conference is echoing through the days and weeks after having been at that conference.
Yeah, I think, you know, touching very briefly, like what Adam was adding onto mine, yeah, it's like coming back to nature, you at first really are like, this is not for me, this is, you know, and you know, and also, like you said, there was a conference, you come in with all these super scholarly and intellectual people, and you really want to put on your best show so that you can fit in, I guess, or at least to impress those around you at the very least. But then those intellectual people ask you to take your shoes off and sit down, and it's like, all right, like at first you're like, this feels, you know, you're gearing yourself up for the day, but yeah, like it breaks you down and it echoes forward, because it's almost like, you know, it's almost like having like some sort of like drug-induced experience in a way. Like you're like, I'm a different person after this, to a degree, of course, but you're like, I really take these things forward with me in my writing and my art and everything, but really I'm like, personally, I can change, like I can be a different person. Which, yeah, very lovely.
I think what you're touching on there, Kale, is really important, because and this is what Adam was pointing to, but you know, if you think academia is an institutional space in which often you are competing with others for attention, space, you know, a permanent position, all sorts of things. So academia, but scholarship is different. To me, and Tyson, you asked about the books behind me. Books are tools for wayfinding, because each book is a conversation you can have with somebody, alive or dead. So what you're talking about here, so the wayfinding is the community of serendipitous encounters. And I think that's fabulous. So thank you. Okay, Adam, do you want to add anything to that before I jump to the last question? Because we've been going for a bit longer than I thought we would. And I appreciate you guys hanging in with us. Thank you.
Well, I wanted to say that another session that resonated with me quite deeply and profoundly, it was dancing in the ruins of the future with you, Marcus. And I actually have a wonderful video of that, which I need to send you.
Okay.
That's one of my action points after this. I have to share it with you. But I wanted to ask you, because I mean, the more I understand wayfinding, the more I find your spirit in that moment? Because it was a day one activity relatively early. And I just wanted to ask you about that, and what was your intention, and where did you find yourself through it?
Well, I am a very embodied person, and I love music and aesthetics, art, music, all that stuff. And dancing was something that came to me relatively late in life, but as a form of expression, I find it incredibly empowering for everybody. So I wrote that book, Phenomenologies of Grace, and I invited 20 people in who did dancing and embodied play and so on with people as part of their professional work. Because in a sense, it's like what Kale was saying, going out in nature is incredibly empowering. And Lily too, yeah, you were pointing, why don't people go out in nature? Why don't people dance before they make really serious decisions? Even if it's not just dancing, we weren't dancing. For those who are listening to this, we were moving, and I was tossing in cues for visualization, giving minimal instructions to some really enlivening music. And the whole thing is just about opening up and affirming the non-language part of consciousness, that embodied part of wayfinding, which I think is overlooked because, especially in academic or disciplinary context, it's the mind that we privilege. But the mind is a vehicle for wayfinding if we allow it, but also for discipline and control and managerialist stuff, which suffocates human creativity, leaches meaning out of the world. We become compulsive and fearful and hopeless, which is what many of you talked about at the very beginning. Whereas, as was it Lily? Someone said, to be hopeful is so important today. To just have love of life is so important today. So the ruins of the future are the fact that we are surrounded by a culture that looks back to the Greeks and everybody, the Christian culture and all these things. And there are thousands of years of encultured experience again and again, which we are still within. And of course, when we think about the future, we are projecting that our culture, our cultural norms and expectations and forms the images of the future into the future. So for me then to navigate those ruins of the future, because we're living in a period of ruin, we're seeing everything that, democracy, peace, relational responsibilities collapsing around us before our very eyes, and the economy, ecology, a whole lot. What do? Well, we have to hold on to what's best in us. So the culture that we inhabit is a culture where we have to become aware, conscious of this world that we're in, and we have to choose. But the culture has beautiful things in it, but it also has horrific things in it. It's like, I say all the time, culture is dirty. It's dirty because it carries all our pain, grief, trauma, and also a bunch of incredibly dull conditioning. So we're like zombies half the time. So it was just a light of fire, Adam. To me, a light of fire, get everybody jumping around and shake it all up. Just shake it all up.
Can I ask something to Marcus about our dancing? What I was thinking of, I'm not sure if anyone else has read this, but about homopopy.
Oh, yeah.
Homopopy, which is sort of survival of the fittest. It's survival of the friendliest. And I think about that with how we are just so inherently, like human beings, we are social, we are communal creatures. We thrive entirely off that. And just not even the movement, the walking around, seeing everyone laughing and smiling and being together, it fulfills you. And it fulfills us. We know it fulfills us as a species, is that that interaction with other people. That's just a little note I had. If anyone who hasn't read that, you guys should totally read Homopopy. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Who's it by, Marcus?
Bregman. I'm just trying to find his first name. Rutger Bregman.
everyone
It's a
would
reading in
benefit
my
from reading
first year course. It's a reading in my first year course
Yeah.
in history, and it's a fabulous reading. It's a fabulous book. So thank you, Lily. I'm very happy that he gets a mention because it's a great book, and it is the survival of the friendliness, relationality, love of nature, love of self. One of the things that I get people to do in that very simple thing is to hug themselves, not somebody else. Hug yourself.
Just to add to that, during that dance, Marcus, you asked us to sort of dance with someone, and I think you may have said someone you don't know, or you may have just said someone very close by, and so I found myself sort of hand to hand, face to face with a woman that I'd never met, and really it was quite powerful to embrace a stranger in that way. And I think that all of these provocations are also encouraging us to see, to not just connect with our higher selves, but to see the higher self in everybody around us. And so, I think one of you mentioned in my talk, speaking to some alarming data that came out of the Edelman Trust Barometer around how 1 in 2 young people surveyed saw violence or the threat of violence, as an adequate way of bringing about change. Now, often the way our societies see young people is that they are violent, and that they are disruptive and dangerous. But this space, this way of knowing, way of doing, is to acknowledge that why is someone feeling that way? What is it about forming your identity in the ruins of today that shapes behavior and attitude, and how do we find empathy, with one another, rather than just racing to judgment, racing to estrangement. And I definitely, similarly have come away from that conference feeling different and wanting to connect to nature, Lily, and wanting to sort of see the good in everybody around me. And that is, really rare, but it shouldn't be. It really shouldn't be. And it says a lot about the sort of culture in which we inhabit.
Yeah. So and we never haven't used this word, but politics. There's a politics to hope, and there's a politics to hopelessness. When we recognize that and look it in the eye, we've got a very simple choice. Are we going to do something that makes us feel better or worse? Confirms our worst fears. So I think that's great. We could keep going, couldn't we? But we're going to have to stop in a moment. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do is think of, the elevator pitch. You're walking around with some of your friends, and you say, I'm going to Oceania 3. It's been fantastic. I'm going because. What will you say? And now I'm going to let you volunteer to go rather than me saying, like I've been going. I did deliberately change the order a little bit, but what would you say? And you can just, as it pops into your head, spit it out, and then we'll keep moving.
I'd be happy to go first if you'd like.
Thank you.
Because I'm new to, not to keep going, because I'm new to it, but I'm also sort of a student of Cat and Jai. Right after the fact, we were kind of talking about, I wanted to reflect with my teachers, so to speak, on my experience, so I can kind of see what they thought of my reflection, sort of. And I think it's a matter of because there's a lot of discussion there and here as well about young people and pessimism and feeling agentic, and how it's really difficult for us to. I think there's a lot of young people, due to a lot of factors of our world, like technology and how society changes and all this kind of stuff, how a lack of hope manifests in a lot of different people. They might cave to these maybe evils in our world or anything like that. So I think if I was to talk to somebody about why to go to the symposium, on a personal level, in the creative arts, it's definitely something that I want to employ, because my field is to create, is to story tell, and think about the future, of course, is a highly crucial part of storytelling. Well, what is your ending, so to speak? But I think even on a more personal level than that, it really does give you hope to be around like-minded people. But futures on a whole is about, it's imagining these futures and how you're going to work towards them, and having a plan gives you hope. And then a lot of these workshops we went to were about nature and stuff as well, about well-being and mindfulness. Like who's gonna say mindfulness and well-being is a bad thing, right? Like, to feel more confident or to feel more, maybe mentally healthy or anything like that. I think that to pitch it to someone, it really supports your work no matter where you are, especially the creative arts in my case. But it really helps you feel maybe fuller as a person in a lot of ways, if not give you the tools to expand your thinking, or feel confident in your decision making, like to pursue kind of well-being and help, like self-help, I guess.
Fantastic.
I feel at first that, that more like spiritual side I was a little bit more confronted by, and I think at first I was a little bit more judgmental than I definitely should have been. And now reflecting, like, there is definitely a lot of truth and value in what a lot of people do and say, even if it's not articulated in maybe the academic way I'm used to it, But it's all very worthwhile no matter what it is, even if it's something totally out of the realm of what you're used to. So yeah.
Covered a lot of
That's
ground.
what I say to
That's
someone.
great, Kale. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Next.
I might riff off of Kale, because I feel like I come from a sort of similar perspective, and I'm really interested in how, futures, or like the future, like typically for someone who, doesn't engage in any futures work, you sort of treat it as, something that's happening to you, and, something you don't really have a lot of control over, and like the future is just the future and the past is just the past. But I think the symposium really helps you reframe that as like something that, or sort of realize that the future is being actively decided right now, and like sort of by people and systems, that don't necessarily have like my interests or my generation's interests in mind. And I think, and that's really uncomfortable to think about. But also as well, like it's, sort of clarifying, because if it is being decided, then it can be decided differently. And I think that's what's, powerful about the symposium, because that's not a naive thing to say at the symposium. Like, everyone's sort of thinking the same way. And I think, and to add to that as well, like, even there's, and I touched on this at the very start, but like there's such a broad range of people that are there, from all different levels of, experience. And like, I'm young, I don't have institutional authority or resources or, decades long, career, which some people do have, but, and I feel like at most tables, or like, other people were talking about, they've been to other conferences where, not having that experience would make you irrelevant. But I think that at, the Oceania Symposium, like, everyone's voice had value. And I think that's the point of Futures, is that everyone, no matter what your background, your, ethnicity or cultural standpoint, or your career, or your, whatever industry you work in, or sort of where you sit in society, like, it didn't really matter. And and it was sort of treated with that like an equitable value, rather like, you bring like a unique insight, no matter what. And yeah, I think that was definitely, like, if I was to pitch to someone else to come along, I feel like that'd be the motivating factor. But yeah.
Thank you. Next.
Carson, do you want to go? Or
That's good. You can go.
Sure. So I guess rather selfishly, I really enjoy going to symposiums. This is my second one now, because I always feel like I leave feeling like, I'm new, not young, but like new. Like, when an infant doesn't quite understand like space, it believes maybe it can pull down the moon. It really feels as though you leave these spaces with new ideas, new thoughts, with a lot of hope, that things can change, that a new perspective on a system can lead to, you know, a better system. And I really always enjoy that because, as again I said, you feel so old when you spend day in day out worrying about your career or what the next day is looking like, or oil prices at the moment. It just drags you down, whereas it's lovely to feel new and a bit lighter, which I think this conference gives.
Fantastic, thank you. Yeah, I agree. I get the same feeling, and now I'm old.
I think you're newer than the rest of us, I reckon.
Okay. Well, did Tyson? Did you pick up on Tyson's body language, Jai, or something?
Oh, I saw the
I was going
camera.
to leap in. Okay, Tyson, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I was going to jump off the back of what Jai had to say there around hope. Given social media and media in general just, you know, likes to throw all the negativity and the bad stuff in the world at us, it's really such a nice breath of fresh air to hear so many optimistic and brilliant people speak about where the future can go, and not just talk about, you know, fluff, actually have some potential solutions and have people engage in those workshops too to think about it as well. So not just sit there and listen, it's get involved. And I'd say that to anybody. And also as a person who does like to challenge myself in the way I think and my perspectives and whatnot, your ways of knowing, being, doing and thinking will be challenged as well. And I think that is always awesome.
Wonderful, thank you. That's great.
I'll go next. I think that my main selling point would be that it will give you purpose. I think especially for people who are feeling a bit nihilistic or pessimistic, I think that it will give people from any walk of life, any career, anything, some hope, and it will give them some purpose.
Thank you, Lily. That's great. JD, you're lucky last.
Yeah, I think everyone said it. No, I have gathered that all of us here pretty much have sort of been feeling bogged down by pessimism, nihilism, and that we've all left feeling just that little bit more refreshed and a reason to keep doing the things that we're doing. Yeah, go because it is such a unique group of people. I don't think any experience can compare to the conference. It's just a group of academics, spiritual hippies is how I would amalgamate that. It's the best people, I think. That's not an insult.
I think that's very funny. Thanks, JD. Yeah, okay, very cool. So thank you all. Adam, do you want to say anything, having sort of, because you've listened to lots of people over many, many years now, young people, you know, would you like to add something just before we wrap it up?
Oh, goodness me. I really like what Jay said about sort of this sort of childish wonder of an experience like this and embracing the inner child. Yeah, I'm so glad you all could come. I think it's so important that these spaces are intergenerational, and that we're not just thinking about past generations or connecting to future generations, but present ones too. And the conference was truly enriched by all of your presence. I think everything that you would dislike about a conference or about networking, this experience is just the antithesis of that. And it's recognizing that, you know, everyone's subjective experience of the world matters and has value. And the fact that you don't have decades of foresight experience does not mean you don't have value and wisdoms that we could all learn from and benefit from. And that's a powerful thing to remember, not just when you're in a space surrounded by people and maybe feeling that impending sense of, you know, imposter syndrome, but just in life, that how you feel and how you see the world matters. And And so I'm really glad you came away feeling that way. And I hope that every year there's a cohort of young people who come in and embrace it with the same enthusiasm and passion and openness and sheer diversity that you all did. So thank you, and thank you, Marcus, for being our sort of navigator and our community weaver and guide. I mean, so many people at the conference spoke about you and your work, and it really does inspire us all. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm inspired by all of you guys. That's there's a community is a drug for sure, and people who are just open to new experiences are so needed now, because that's where I think our best futures lie in potential. I also want to obviously thank the sponsors who enabled you guys to all attend. I think we have to come back to that.
Yeah,
One
thank
thing
you.
Yes, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And the last point is, no one mentioned the food. The food was really good.
Oh, that salad bar on the
Most
second
people
day
go
was
to
delicious.
most people go. Sorry, Kale, what was that?
Oh, the salad bar on the second day was delicious. That was lovely lunch.
Yeah.
So most people go to the conferences for the food and the chat around the coffee table, not what's happening in the thing, So I think that's really to be acknowledged. So I want to thank you all. Really, very much appreciate you giving us an hour and a half. Really, my God, I am overwhelmed with your generosity, and I really look forward to catching up with you all in your various walks of life. You know where I am. You know the kind of things I do. There's all these futures courses, the Futures Sanctuary. There's also the Sunshine Coast Futures Hub, and there are hubs popping up all over now because of this. This Oceania has sort of spawned this kind of thing. So I think there's much that you can get involved with in your own domains. Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Thank you, Marcus. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you very much.